Mariko Johnston is one of my favorite people to talk to about just the weirdness of life, whether it's the esotericness of life, the actual materialisticness of life, spirituality. It's just love chatting with her. So today I'm stealing a couple hours of her time while she's in town from Portland to talk to her about her acupuncture path, the Chinese medicine that she practices and intertwines with acupuncture. And then, we just really start talking about life. We get into subjects about the Crone and Sage stages in our life as we get older and how to embrace those things. Really love this conversation, and I hope you really get something out of it. We'll see you guys on the other side. All right, welcome back to our show. Today, sitting across from me is a dear, dear friend of mine that I've known for a number of years. We've been close for a long time, and then you moved to Portland, kind of came back, and now we're bouncing between two. Hopefully, you'll get back here and find a home. So Mariko Johnston is so I met you as a yoga instructor.
Yeah, I think you met me during my first teacher training, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, totally. We went to, I think I didn't know you at the time, but I went to a class with you and Mike Bailey, and I was dating a woman named Esther at the time. We went to Shakti, and Esther kept talking about how these two people in her yoga teacher training were always upside down, always on their hands. You got to meet them. You'll love them. And then I took class with you and Mike, and I'm like, oh my God, they're always upside down. This is awesome. So that was my first official meeting with you, but we didn't really get to know each other until years down the road, maybe about a year or so down the road. So today, Mariko is here to talk about. So Mariko is a licensed acupuncturist. She has her acupuncture Eastern Asian medical practice degree, and you're working towards becoming a doctor.
That's correct.
Excellent. And so today we're going to talk about acupuncture, the different ways that this modality can help, and also we're going to talk about just some random shit because Mariko is one of my favorite people to talk to about random shit about. And it's not like we plan on it. It just happens. We tangent the hell out of stuff. So we'll probably talk about Dharma, which is your yoga mentor out of New York, right?
He is out of New York, yeah.
As well as anything else, right? So really excited about this conversation today. But let's start off with just talking about you and acupuncture. I mean, how is that? I've known you for a long time, and I saw your path, and I've experienced the path, which has been friggin' amazing. But what took you towards acupuncture?
You know, it's funny. I've answered this question so many times, and this story, it never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah.
How far back do you want to go? Anyway, no, I had just finished my teacher training with Dharma. I'd done my 500 hour, and as part of the training, we were vegan, and that was fine. Anyway, I was always looking for vegan eating options, which were not plentiful back in the day.
Yeah.
And so I remember one day I was on Yelp, and Bastier's cafeteria came up on my search for vegan restaurants. So I grabbed my friend, and we went there for lunch. And I don't know, have you been on Bastier's campus?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's
Beautiful
on
campus.
St. Edward's State Park, and
Yeah.
you drive down through the woods and up this hill, and you come up on this clearing, and it looks like Hogwarts.
Mm-hmm, totally.
Right? And so we're driving up to Bastier, and I'm just thinking, God, this place is magical. Like, there's something about being here that is just, like, touching me to my core. And we went in the building, and we had lunch, and by the time we were done, I just knew that I was supposed to be there doing something. So I thought, well, okay, I'd been thinking about going back to school, and I thought, well, they have an Ayurvedic track, and I might explore that. So I started looking that up online. I looked at it, and I thought, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Backtrack. I'm always going on intuition. If something doesn't feel right, I don't do it, and if something does feel right, I almost to a fault will jump into it, and then look later what I jumped into. But anyway, Ayurveda, not my thing. And then I thought, well, I'll look around and see what else they have. So I'm on their website, and acupuncture popped up. And for some reason, I just said, yep, that's it. That's right. Now, mind you, I'd never had acupuncture before this.
Okay.
But I was so set, like, yeah, this feels right. This is what I'm supposed to do. So I applied for school. That was May. And I think I was starting school in July. So it happened really
Yeah, really
quickly.
quick. Yeah.
But in that meantime, I went and got acupuncture every chance I could get. I was
Yeah.
like, what is this medicine that I'm getting myself into? And my first day of school, we had a points class where we were learning where the channels were and where the points were. And I remember the first thing that they had us do is they had us pair up and just palpate each other's bodies and see if we could actually locate points without
Oh,
knowing where they were.
okay. So just your intuition.
Yeah, your intuition. And I knew right from that moment. I thought, here I am at Hogwarts and they're teaching me how to use my intuition. I'm in Disneyland. This is my dream right now. I knew I was in the right place. And I've never looked back or regretted it since. I remember the first time I had to needle myself in school. Some of my peers were pretty hesitant, having to jab a needle into themselves, and I just thought, oh, this is great. And it just every time I've put a needle into a body, it's just felt like this is something I've done before, or it's just remembering. Not learning, if that makes sense. That was a long story. I'm sorry, but yeah, that's how I got into acupuncture.
I love, the idea of remembering, and I think there's a lot of that goes on with a lot of the things that we find passionate about. It's, there's, some people call it like intrinsic, or it's like I'm a natural at it. I think maybe we did this once before in a previous life or in a previous existence. And this is you remembering how amazing this modality or this thing, this healing thing, this singing, whatever the thing is that you remember, how beautiful it is and how it makes you feel. It's like walking yourself home,
Well, patients ask me all the time how long I've been doing this, and my answer is, do you mean this lifetime?
What kind of response do you get from them?
Well, I find what's really interesting is I find that I tend to draw the kind of patient to me that is receptive of hearing the idea that I've probably practiced this multiple lifetimes.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a beautiful message too, is that, we find the people the people will find us that need the help that we provide. So many times, and so many healers, that I've met and that I've worked with are like, oh, I've got to learn this modality because this person wants me to work on them with this. Okay. And if you feel drawn to that, that's great. But if you're changing what your modality is and you're not fully embracing what the new thing that you're learning it just so you can, let's say, retain this client and pay a bill or whatever it is, then that authenticity is not there. But, and again, I'm not saying that you're not drawn to it to learn it, to then embrace it in your practice. But, we're drawn to the things that we're drawn to, and the people are drawn to us for those reasons, And I feel that takes a lot of the pressure off of us as in whatever healing modality that you're in. I don't want to call us healers because, we're not waving magic wands and shit. It's all within the people that we're working with to heal. We just have some tools that we're going to help them with, So, a lot of that takes that pressure off of us, is to like, oh gosh, I got to find the right healing modality. I got to find the right words to say. I got to find the right energy. It's no. You're right there. You're doing what you do.
Well, and that brings up something for me too. I strongly feel like if you go out there with the right intention, doesn't matter what it is, and you wholeheartedly believe in what you're doing, the universe will always provide. So
yeah,
they'll provide that client for you that is
exactly.
receptive to whatever it is you're doing.
I listened to an herbalist talk not too long ago on the Ben Greenfield podcast. I can't remember the guy's name though. But he was talking about how he sits with plants and to understand what the plants can offer. So he meditates with plants and things like that. That's one of the processes that he has. He could, look on the internet and see that, holy basil is going to help, decalcify brain cells and blah, blah, blah. Or he can meditate with it and find those answers himself. But one of the things that he drew towards, which really interesting to me, was he said, okay, so let's take holy basil again. So holy basil has, a list of effects the things that it can do for the body to help. But let's say a client comes and needs help with something that holy basil isn't readily known to help with. His point for this was, I've meditated so much with this plant that I can ask it to do anything that I need it to do.
It's that relationship.
Right, exactly. And that's such a beautiful concept to me, to know that you've utilized and understood a thing, right? In this plant, in this instance, it's a plant being. It could be a stone. It could be a scent, right? You've utilized and understood this thing, this modality so well that it trusts you enough that you are going to keep its best interest in mind when you're using it to help somebody, and it trusts you, and you trust it, right? So there's this reciprocal like nature that happens that opens up everything to what it needs to be. And that's an interesting message to me, that, anything can be whatever it needs to be for you if you give it the time to allow it to be.
Right. And then that also goes into the intent.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I also feel like the intent of the practitioner will definitely guide the outcome of a person's results or healing or
Most
anything.
definitely.
But that brought up something for me too. I did hear that podcast, and that was great. And for me, there are practitioners that can use one Chinese formula
Okay.
for everything. I've met a few, and they just change the ratios depending on the person that's in front of them. But we as acupuncturists, I don't want to speak for all of us, but I know I personally have my friends that certain points that I use all the time, and it can do all different kinds of things just depending on what it is that I want it to do.
Right.
And, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm starting to find that with the healing instruments that I use, tuning forks, for example. There's tuning forks that are tuned to specific chakras, specific energy centers, things like that. But in utilizing the gentleman that I was talking about, his modality for learning instruments, learning his plants, I meditate with my instruments, and that same kind of idea. So sitting with them and asking them as I sit down, please help me understand how I can best utilize you. What can I do in my practices for my personal self, for my clients, to help let this instrument be utilized in the best way possible. And so the grounding tuning fork was one of the first ones that I started doing that with, and it's a weighted tuning fork. I can't remember what it's tuned to, but it's a grounding frequency. And but now I find myself using the grounding tuning fork all over the body, right? It's not just with the feet and the hips and the grounding
Right.
energies. For me now, that grounding tuning fork is a way for me to identify stuck energies throughout the body, and also to start healing those stuck energies, right? So say you have a blockage in your crown chakra. Yes, I can grab my crown chakra tuning fork and I could hit that guy up, and I can hit you up, and we'll get that going. But I feel that also this root tuning fork that I've been using is going to be more powerful because we've created a relationship, and it understands what my intention is, and I understand what its intention is, and so it's just really interesting, just to find these different ways to utilize the things that we do utilize in the different ways once we get more familiar with them.
Yeah, and I think it also plays into that, whatever works in your hands,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because when it comes down to acupuncture, there's so many different styles, and people are in this camp and that camp, and they can argue, oh, I'm 5-element and that works best. No, I do Korean hand acupuncture and that works best. And well, they all work, right?
Right,
But
right.
why do they work? It's what works best in that person's hand. And side note, I gotta say those bowls are definitely your tools. Just from the vibration I could feel from them when I came in. That was crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love those bowls. And it's just, the bowls have been something that I've been drawn to pretty fiercely. I can definitely credit Richard Grace for starting that passion for me, unknowingly. And then, when he left, it left a big void in the sound healing community up here. And, thankfully I was not stepping in by any means, but the opportunity was given to me to help, step towards sound healing in general as well. So can't get away from those messages, and those ones are just screaming at me. Every time I turn around, there's a bull screaming at me. I'm like, all right, cool, let's do this.
They talk to you. That's interesting. Do you find that when you work with clients that the body speaks to you as well too?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that's something that's been a newer development for me. When I first started working with clients, I tried to. So I would sit and channel, in the morning of, okay, these are my clients for today. How can I best serve them? but I would definitely feel my ego getting in there and saying, okay, this bowl, this modality, this thing, whatever it is. And not to say it didn't work, but now I still connect with my clients when I sit down in the mornings. Just like today, I sat down and meditated. I thought about you and the conversation we're having. Best ways we can have this conversation. Personally, I call Saraswati in, the goddess of divine speech and knowledge, to help guide the conversations. My spiritual family's around me. But with clients now, what I've been trying to do is just be more intuitive with it, and that's been a big journey for me, is intuition. It's not something it's something I ignored for a long time, and so it's been a journey for me to get back to that point. But part of that journey for me is to stop trying to plan sessions and let my intuition drive it, which I think it always has. It always has driven it in its own way, but it's like those intuitive ideas are given to me, and then my ego takes it as an ego moment and be like,
Right.
oh, I just thought of this thing, and then
Yeah.
I'm going to run with this, but now I understand the parts that, my internal, I don't want to call it a struggle, my internal balance is at play, and I know how to love my ego for the idea that it feels like it came up with, and then let that ego share it with the consciousness, and let the consciousness really kind of manifest that idea. So yeah, it's been a big practice for me.
To be human.
Yeah, to be human, exactly.
No, that really resonates with me. I know there's been plenty of times where I know I'm meeting with such and such. I don't like to call people patients. I'd rather call them clients.
Yeah.
But say I'm meeting with a client and I know they have this issue going on, and I have this perfectly laid out plan in my head that we're going to do this, this, and this. And then I go in and, you hear like, no, GB 41, stomach 43. You're like, okay, really wide. And, sometimes you just have to step out of the way, and the best results come from just being able to be guided by those things. You know?
There's times where when I first started getting messages from other clients, spiritual guides and things like that, and it's still few and far between. I'm still trying to hone those skills and the gifts that have been blessed to me. But the times that when I first started getting messages, I would try to decipher them, and then like try to rationalize what the message was in my head. And let's say it's like pink bunny popped in my head. And so instead of just telling the client, hey, pink bunny, what does that mean to you? I would try to like rationalize it. Okay, so I'm in a room and I'm seeing a bunny and I think it might be pink. It might be, but I'm, and instead of just saying what I feel and I know, I'm just like, placating to all this stuff, which confuses the person, right? Because the message gets diluted through my consciousness of trying to, understand and rationalize it and then explain it. So, my practice now is when I get those messages, I just say exactly what I feel or what I see or what I hear. So, hey, pink bunny.
Yeah, it's much more powerful that way. On.
But exactly, in that, in no context around it, just the word pink bunny, saying to my client made that person cry. It resonated something with them that was deep within their knowing that they've forgotten about, or, touched them very deeply as some memory. And, so me just saying exactly what came to me had that effect. But if I try to define it and try to rationalize it with my own human brain, it would lose all its context to that person. So a lot of that times, like, we just need to get out of our own way and just, if I, like you said, GB 40, right? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do that. But all of a sudden now there's a rattle in my hand. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not doing anything with needles today. I'm just gonna fucking rattle all day long,
Yeah.
Challenge accepted, right? So.
No, definitely. I think if we can just be a vessel, the clearest vessel that we can be, it seems to be the most potent medicine, in my opinion. Yesterday I was working with a client, and I remember when I first started, I would listen to the pulse, and part of what we do as Chinese medicine practitioners is we're almost like a detective, right? The moment you come in, we're watching how you walk, we're looking at how your eyes are moving, the sound of your voice, all different things, and then we ask you a bunch of fun questions. We ask you about your sleep and what you're eating. What are your dreams like? Tell me about your bowel movements, your urination. Nothing's off the table. So we get all these pieces of the puzzle together, and then we get to decipher like what's going on with this person. And getting back to what I was saying in the beginning, I used to get really caught up in how do I put all these things together to make up this clear, concise diagnosis. And I've realized, like, if I can just get out of the way and listen to what the body's saying, it comes across. It's much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday I was with this client, and I was listening to her pulse, and that was one thing that I used to have a hard time in interpreting. And I'm still fairly new at this. I think by the time I'm 90, I might have somewhat of a grasp on what it is that I'm feeling. So I get out of my own way, and I just tend to blurt out what I feel. And I said to her, like, your diaphragm's tight. You're having a hard time breathing, and your heart pulse is scattered. Take that as you will. And she said, what do you mean by scattered? And I said, well, the best way I can explain it is you're feeling this pulse in all three positions, and the first two are smooth, and then this last one, it just feels like it's all over the place, which correlates with the heart position. So it just kind of feels like your heart's all over the place. And she was quiet. We were going about our session. I was kneeling her, and then she started crying, and she started telling me about, she was facing a difficult decision in her life, and it had to do with an important relationship that she's been sitting on this thought for a long time and had never given voice to it. So she felt like she had that tightness in her diaphragm, like she couldn't breathe because she was holding on to this. And I was like, oh. And she thanked me, and I thought, oh, that was pretty interesting. I got that from what I felt under my fingertips, but, I don't know where I'm going with that other than, the body tells you. And
it really does.
When you can just get your ego, when you take yourself out of the equation, that's when the magic happens.
Yep. And I think you got to realize that the self is in the way at the first, right? Realize that the ego's been driving the bus for a little while. Even if you're not ready to deal with what the ego's been doing, right? We still got to realize that that's been happening, and that there's separateness, there's layers and levels of your consciousness, right? And, we talked about this, and I talk about this a lot on this podcast, but we talked about this right beforehand, but, that whole idea of killing the ego, right? We can't do that. We have to find a space for it. It's like, it's like the dysfunctional child in your family. It's like, we still love that child. We still care for it. We can't just like kick that child out, as much as we want to sometimes. There's a place for him, or him, her, that being. And finding the right place for that person, and that part of you is part of the process of finding the balance of your humanity. Everything plays a role. The ego for a lot of us, that like let's say I'm 41 now. I probably became aware that my ego was the main driver of my boat when I was in my mid 30s. I still wasn't ready to do anything about it, but I was just like aware now, finally, like, oh shit, there's this ego thing that's driving my boat, and he's probably a child that I'm just not ready to deal with yet. But finding the balance of that person, just like finding the balance of life, right? The balance of your healing modalities, right? Finding balance with our chi by having needles inserted into us. Sometimes there's blockages, excesses, sometimes there's negatives, and that we have to have, with me, it's Reiki energy. I have Reiki energy that I am blessed with, and a hollow bone conduit for, and I'm able to, help my clients that way. So it's really finding the modality that works the best for you.
Exactly.
Right? There's all these ones out there, but I love, and I was very ignorant to acupuncture before you started. You were actually the only person that's ever performed on me.
That stuck you with the needle?
It stuck me with needles. And, so a lot of my knowledge has come from by proxy you, right? So you going through college, going through your schooling before you went to Portland. And so it was really interesting to me to hear that there were different ways to acupuncture, right? So there's like the healing ways of, let's say my back hurts, right? I'm going to come in and you're going to do some stuff, and right. But there's also, internal, like organ things that we can work with.
Internal medicine, sure.
Right. And then, but the one that really kind of threw me for a loop was the sacred geometry.
Yeah.
Acupuncture that you did for Monica and I. I still tell stories about that of like, I don't know where the hell I was. I don't know how long I was there, but I was very conscious of being there. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life.
It was so great. Just to go back on that, I remember both of you were face down together, And I could see like neither of you were in your body at that point in time, but your bodies were laying right there. And it was just, that was great. And thank you for letting me do that when I was new and green.
Anytime.
And, no, you're right. There are different levels that we work at for sure. The one that we jumped to right away was that spiritual, emotional level. And that's probably what I was drawn to at first, as this is what I want to do. This is the only place I want to work. I only want to help people ascend and unblock their chakras and see things and step into their gifts or whatever it is. And as I've gone along in my practice, I realized like, yeah, that's great, but it's just a small portion of the percentage of the population is ready for that kind of work. And I'm really limiting myself. And I have learned at my time in working in clinics where I do work on pain that it's very helpful, and pain's like a gateway. That there's almost this sequential process that people go through where they come in and they say, well, I have pain. And yeah, that's usually what people come in for because that's what insurance will pay for. Don't get me started on insurance. We could talk about that forever. But, that's what brings them in the door. Yeah. And it's one thing that we're really good at, and it shows quick results. So we can show immediately people see how this can be a helpful modality in their healing. And then once the pain subsides and we've been talking for a while, and of course, one of the things people enjoy so much about being with a Chinese medicine practitioner is these conversations that we have, because we are detectives. We have very in-depth conversations where we're listening. And I don't know if you've been to a Western medical doctor in recent times, but you might get 5 to 10 minutes tops of that person listening to you. We have an hour to 90 minutes to listen to, what's going on. Tell me your deepest desires. What bothered you this week? Any of it. We listen to all of it. And so, after people recover from their pain, they start thinking, well, hey, can you help me with this? Like, I don't know, I've had digestive issues or low libido, something, And then we work on that for a little while, and eventually it feels like that opens the door to what's next. And I don't know, one of the things that I find so beautiful about this medicine is I've done a lot of inner child work like you, and a lot of it is processing, reliving things, and maybe in front of people, and that's not always very comfortable.
Right.
And I also feel like, you can only do that when you have the resources and tools to deal with that trauma that you're processing. Yeah. But I feel like with some of these other modalities, and acupuncture especially, it gives the person the opportunity to be able to work through the energetic knots or blockages that they might have from past trauma without having to relive it. Yeah. So it's very clearing might be the right word. I don't know.
I think you touched on something really strong, in my opinion, about the way that our Western situation is, our medical system set up right now, is that it's very transactional. And there isn't a lot of time for the patient and the doctor to actually talk, and which is kind of funny because doctors, the term that I grew up with knowing from doctors is bedside manner, right? How's your bedside manner, right? Their doctors were known for having that compassion and for being there and for having the time to talk to patients and clients and whatever it is, whatever you want to call them. And now it's so far from that. And, there's a lot of holistic doctors that I work with right now. There's one a clinic in Renton called New Wave Medicine. That's more of like a subscription-based medical system to where, it doesn't take insurance. You can be a member of their facility. You get 60 to 90 minutes per session, with a trained physician. Ashley is the woman I've been working with. But, just these different modalities of the different ways to come out, of dealing with, our medical system has been beautiful. But one of the things that I've noticed personally, and again, I'm 100% like staunch. I am not a doctor, nowhere near a doctor. I'm not studying to become a doctor. I'm a Reiki practitioner, sound healer. That's it, right? But the clients that I have that come see me, I can tell like like you were saying earlier about it's the questions that you ask. You're holding space for a human being. You're asking them about their life that probably they've, unless they're in, unless they have that relationship that they can talk about that stuff with, not a lot of people do, right? They don't feel safe to talk about their feelings and emotions. Don't want to feel like they're burdening somebody by explaining how sad they are or whatever it is. So a lot of times, like, I get so much from people just from the space holding and letting the therapeutic dialogue just do what it does. I'm not even doing Reiki yet. I mean, obviously there's Reiki in the room, there's energy in the room that's happening because that's just the modality we're working with. But I'm not putting my hands on you. I haven't played any bowls yet, and I can feel the releases of people just from having a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just from feeling heard. Feeling that they're not being judged from expressing the way that their body feels or their consciousness feels. So I think that's a big message too. That doesn't, you don't have to pay somebody for that. You can go grab coffee with somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Be vulnerable with a homie and be like, hey, friend, I've got some shit I'd love to talk to you about. Can I buy a cup of coffee? It might be a heavy conversation, but you know what? You'd be surprised how many people step up to that shit.
Right. I'm curious. I want to know because we were both yoga teachers. I mean, you still teach yoga. I guess I don't really anymore. At some point, that was our main focus. And then as the journey's gone on, I know I've gone off to acupuncture and you've moved on to this other modality. And I wonder, I don't even know what I'm trying to ask here. Do you find more fulfillment in being able to have that time to have conversations with people? Because I know when I got into teaching yoga, and I was a trainer before that because I've always wanted to help people, I didn't feel like I was effective enough at what I wanted to do with people, standing in front of a class, guiding them through their practice. Not that there was anything wrong with that. It just wasn't fulfilling my path. And I wonder if you felt more of a sense of fulfillment now being able to have more one-on-one interactions with people than you did before.
That's a great question. I think, okay, so I call my ego corporate Adam. Right, so that's the name I've given my ego. I have a friend, Chris Pugh, who's been on the podcast before, who's a therapist. He went to Bastyr for his psychology, and then he went to UW. But his recommendation is to name your ego so you can have conversations with it, and then like tell them what to do. Like go sit in the corner for a little bit. Like you're not driving the bus. So corporate Adam has spent a lot of time in both group and individual settings, right? So I used to build teams, which involved a lot of training, from restaurant teams of hourly staff members, which are big group training sessions, to I've just hired a manager and I'm going to spend 2 weeks with that person one-on-one and just train that person. So my path in unconscious living, my corporate life, kind of prepared me to be able to move between the two modalities of group training and individual stuff.
No, that makes sense.
And so I do feel that I understand what you're saying, how you can get a lot more from the individual than you can from the group, seemingly. But, I think a lot of the training that I've had has helped me find success in being able to find the space to hold in a group and to find the verbiage and the vocabulary that I need to get the group to where the group needs to be. But also that individual therapeutic dialogue as well. So I do prefer now the more individual one-on-ones because now I can get directly to you and I don't have to speak to a group. But I still feel that I was set up to be able to embrace group settings and still get the message across that I felt like I needed to get across. If that
totally makes
long-winded
sense.
Answer to your question.
I guess I'm also curious, did you set out to be a yoga teacher?
Oh, no, not at all.
No.
But I can say, I would say within the first year of me practicing yoga, I knew that I was going to be a teacher. I knew it. There was just something inside me that, I'm a very addicted person, like a very addicted personality. So I got to be careful about the substances and the modalities that I practice because I'll just immerse myself in them, healthy or not. And when I started doing yoga, it went from, I think the first month I went like maybe once or twice a week. And then after that, I was like 5 to 7 times a week. Like I really just dove in head first. And so, yeah, within that first year, I'm like, I'll be teaching this. One point in time, I'm teaching this. so happy that I did. And, I'm
Oh, for
teaching it for
sure.
the way different reasons now than I started. But, it's so beautiful to watch the evolution of your own being, you know,
Right.
the knowledge that you get in, how past knowledge can now affect the new knowledge base that you're
Oh,
working
for
with. And like,
sure.
even understanding that, we have to really, but to find that balance in ourselves. But the shit that we're ashamed of that we've done in the past is stuff that we're like, God, I'm so happy I did that then, because this gives me this information now to do this stuff now that I understand. Now I don't have to damage all this. I've already went through that experience, and now I'm an older. It's just,
It's
there's
all part of the curriculum.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now, I'm so thankful. Something you said earlier about being able to get the ego out of the way when you're in front of someone, when you're working with them. And I feel like I owe such a great debt to my yoga practice to be the kind of practitioner that I am now, that I can at least acknowledge that my ego's there. But yeah, no, yoga's been huge.
Yeah.
I can't imagine stepping into this role of being, a Chinese medicine doctor if I hadn't had followed this path first. But we were speaking earlier. I mean, I chose this path long before I
Right.
incarnated, right? So,
Well, your yoga path to me has always been very interesting too. The I think one of the main reasons, which I didn't probably realize until about a year ago, is that your teacher Dharma is probably one of the more. I didn't know the name at the time. I know the name Dharma from Dharma in general,
sure.
but not the human being Dharma. But unfortunately, we could talk to two cases right off the bat. A lot of the yoga, we'll call them gurus, even though that's not the right name for it, have been drunk on power. And you have Baron Baptiste is one that's under the microscope right now for a lot of the stuff that he's been doing with Baptiste and power yoga. And then you have Bikram, right? And so I know that's just two examples of the litany of amazing yoga teachers and again, quote unquote gurus. But one of the things I loved about Dharma and love about is that the message is so pure and beautiful, and the power doesn't seem to have gone to his head.
Oh my goodness,
He's
no.
still a very humble human being. And again, I don't follow him that closely, but what you've shared with me and the videos that I do watch of him, you can really feel that there's little to no ego involved in the explanation of the universe that he knows.
Yeah, he's definitely walked the walk, so that he can talk the talk. But I mean, one of the things that really drew me to him is he's constantly saying, "I'm not a guru.
Right.
I'm a human," and he is so quick to show you how he's fallible. He talks about, he's vegan, and he says, every while I have to eat the mozzarella because I need my pizza,
Yeah.
and then I cleanse, and he's just so honest about it. And I remember when I showed up for one of my for my teacher training, 10 days in New York, 2 times. It was fantastic. But the second time we came, and he said, Dharma Mitra, his name first off translates to friend of all. That was the name given to him by his teacher, Yogi Gupta. And he said that he had been developing this scowl in his forehead. So he had these lines here between his eyebrows. And it was kind of, he said it made him look like a Klingon. And he felt bad that he thought that people always thought that he was looking at him like in a cross manner.
Okay.
And he thought, well, this doesn't go along with my, I'm a friend to everyone. I don't know, it's not helping my message come across when it looks like I'm always scowling at people. So he says very innocently as we're sitting there, and this is like after our morning spiritual practice, he says, I have this friend, my friend the doctor, and I'm going to go see him, and he's going to put some magic water right here in between my eyebrows. And so by the time that this 10 days is over, I'm not going to be scowling at you anymore. And that was his way of innocently saying, I'm actually human. I'm going to go get Botox because
Right.
I am concerned about how I look like I'm angry all the time. And, I have so many stories of Dharma like that, but he's so honest about his humanness. And I mean, the man's prolific. Like, you can't, if you've ever seen that chart, of his with
Oh my gosh,
the
yeah.
1300 postures, well, the story behind that is incredible too.
I don't know the story. Not at
Oh,
all.
okay. So, Dharma's actually from Brazil.
Okay.
And he knew from an early age that there was something a little bit more to life than what was right in front of him. And so he started reading books at a young age about spirituality and Hinduism and this and that. And he said, I need to find a teacher. All right. So he's in Brazil. He's like, I got to find a teacher. And in the meantime, he joins the Air Force and he's this bodybuilder, which is crazy because if you see Dharma in these pictures, his body just moves in ways that the rest of us can only dream of.
Yeah.
But he was like this jacked bodybuilder. And at some point, his brother came to the U.S. and met Yogi Gupta and wrote to Dharma and says, you need to come out here right now. Like, your teacher's here. So Dharma dropped everything. And he came to New York, and he was lucky enough to give the position of kind of serving Yogi Gupta personally. So he spent a lot of time with him, and he spent years in this I guess you'd call it ashram, learning from Yogi Gupta and the ways and whatnot. And at the age of about 40, he left the ashram and decided that he needed to do something on his own. And it's just, this is one of the reasons why I believe that if you go out with the right intention, the universe provides. Is he tells this story that he left with just his little bag. And Dharma always has a little Lululemon bag, and it's amazing. He travels with this little bag and has everything in it. But anyway, he's standing on the corner in New York City, has no idea what he's going to do, and he just has this little bag of possessions. And he ran into some students that he had met from the ashram, and they took him in and they said, why don't you teach for us? And it just kind of developed from there. And now he's this world-renowned teacher. And I'm sorry, I'm totally getting off track, but as he started to have some success teaching, he decided that he wanted to honor his teacher, Yogi Gupta. And so he came up with the idea that he was going to make this chart of like 1,300 postures and give it to Yogi Gupta. And so back in the day, we didn't have computer editing or any of that stuff. You didn't have a digital camera. So I highly recommend that anyone that's listening look at this chart. So what Dharma did was he had the camera in, what were those things called? It was like the remote, but it was actually attached to the camera.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. So he would set up the tripod and the camera, and he would get in the posture. And some of these are like crazy postures where he's on one hand, and he would have the remote in his mouth. So he had a delay on the timer and the camera, so he would bite down, to take the picture, spit the remote out, and then hold the posture while it took the picture of him, right? So you can imagine how many takes that took. Well, it doesn't end there. So this is the epitome of this man's devotion to doing this.
Shit.
So he gets all these pictures printed up. And this is also back in the day when you had to send your film off and you had to wait weeks for it to come back to see if anything was actually what you took a picture of, right? So he collected all these pictures, and then by hand, he cut out each one and then pinned them to this board. And I don't know, he used string and tacks to get them all in line. And then once he got them pinned to the board, he took another picture of that all together and then had to photocopy it and have it blown up. and then he was like, okay, I'll make like 100 copies or something like that, because it was in honor of his teacher. And I don't know, like, I'll have to look it up, but now like everywhere in the world, every corner in the world, you find a picture of Dharma. And it's great because people see this and they go, oh, that guy's great, I wish he was still alive. Well, here's the funny thing, he still is very alive and kicking in New York. But yeah, anyway, that's just to show
amazing.
His devotion, and that's what I mean. Like, he's not drunk in power. Everything. One of the things I love so much about Dharma and his teachings is that he constantly says everything is done as an offering, either to God, higher spirit, your supreme self, whatever it is.
Right.
It's all an offering. And
I think that, with that, it if it's an offering, then you have intention behind it. And if you have intention, then you're aware of why you're doing the thing you're doing. I think there's so much that we do in this world that if we were aware of our intentions and we actually we had an intention going into it, it would land so differently.
Sure.
And not only the differently it would land, let's say with another human being, but with ourselves, it would land differently. When we're conscious of the reason we're doing something, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it, we're always understanding of that, right? And it's not, a lot of the times what, I again speak from example from this, I will beat myself up later on for something that I justified doing then, right? And that's that guilt shame cycle that we get into. Why did I make that decision? Why did I do that thing? God, I should have done that. Well, at some point in time, there was a rational human being that said, Adam, you know what? That's a good thing you should do, right? And the more conscious we are about those decisions, the more we understand that that rational human being made that decision. It wasn't just an egoic flip of the switch and be like, yeah, I got to do that thing. Extra cheese. Yeah, fucking cool. And then later on, you're on the toilet because you're lactose intolerant. But like, why did I have extra cheese?
You needed the lesson.
Exactly, right? So that consciousness that we have making living the life that we're living helps lessen that guilt shame cycle that we might put ourselves through later on, because we're fully aware of what we're doing, how we're doing, and why we're doing it. And one of the worst things we do to ourselves is treat ourselves like shit.
Yeah.
Nobody talks to us the way that we talk to ourselves.
And you know what's so interesting to me too is that I feel like I've heard you speak about the body keeps score, and nothing is more powerful to our body than our own words, our own vibration. And these loops that we get into of self-talk, they leave some interesting things behind in the body. And I see that a lot working with patients, like just stuck energy. And I don't know. Sometimes it's just a matter of like, have you considered these things that you say to yourself, like consciously or unconsciously and repeatedly? I don't know where I'm going with that. But.
Well, I think that's just a beautiful message in general. We tend, like, I used to dehumanize myself a lot without even recognizing the fact that I was doing it. And a lot of times it was playful. Like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Oh, I'm a piece of shit. I can't.
Yeah, your body doesn't know it's playful.
Exactly. And that's the biggest message, is that your body's going to recognize that vibration as what exactly it is. It's that negative vibration. So when you talk about yourself, like, oh, I'm such an idiot, I can't believe I did that, that's like a placating, oh, I'm such an idiot. But your body's like, oh, I'm an idiot. It's like, oh, hey, Adam, you know what? I'm going to send you some love. You did something you probably would have done differently if you had a different understanding about it. Good on you for doing the best you can. Let's do something different now, right? Yeah, that's a lot longer dialogue in your head than, oh, I'm a fucking idiot. But, it's so much nicer. It's like a blanket that's being wrapped around you. It's like, hey, I love you. Yeah, we make a mistake. That's cool, man. You're going to learn from that, and you'll be better next time. Good on you. Get out there and make me proud. There's a softness that I think if we have with ourselves, then we can find that with others.
That's so interesting. I was thinking as you were saying that, which I was trying to listen, but I was also thinking too, so I'm going to apologize right now for that. It does happen. That might be one of my favorite things about this work that I do, is seeing people soften and watching them become more aware of themselves, whether that's physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like, you just see the lights turn on. Yeah. It might be gradual, but to see that evolution, human evolution, oh man, that's the most rewarding thing about this work. Yeah. And I imagine you experience some of that too, because I mean, acupuncturists aren't the only ones that help people.
Oh yeah.
People along, right? We all do.
Yeah. It's beautiful to watch watch a client come in, and we have our intake, and a lot of times, especially if somebody new, we're creating a relationship, they're trusting me, I'm trusting them. And, but a lot of times when people come in, they're really absorbed in their issue, right? They're the thing that they're working through, or they're wanting to work through. And so you can almost feel it's like palpable, like furrowed brow, body language, like anger stuff, like fist clenched.
We'd see a wiry pulse in my office.
Wiry pulse, right? Yeah. And then, but we get them on our table in some capacity, and within, I'd say, sometimes immediately if we worked together before, but within like 5 minutes, you start to see that relaxing happen. and the fists unclench, and the brow starts to soften, and you can see the corners of the mouth kind of turn down and relax, and it's like, thank you. If just this, thank
If
you.
nothing else,
if
right?
anything, exactly. Just be here and release that shit.
Do you happen to remember the last time I was gifted the time to treat you? We were talking about how one of my favorite things is listening to the voice change as the needles are placed in, and you were talking to me, and I was listening to your voice trail off, and it was just, it's such a great feeling.
I do remember that. That was a beautiful experience. I think I still owe you a Reiki session for that.
You do.
Beautiful. There you go.
Once I get settled in and I'm not living in two states, then
Minor details.
Minor details, which is okay. It feels like, and I think we've talked about this before, it is Chinese New Year. And I was thinking about today, what an auspicious day. It's like 2/22/22 that we're getting to speak. It's fantastic. I love repeating numbers. But, we've had different energies the past few years. And I think we had talked about a couple years ago, what year was that? 2020, 2021? Whenever I lived up here, I came up here briefly.
I think it was,
yeah, it was the year of the rat, which I don't know if I ever spoke to you about that, so. And it's metal energy, and it was that energy of going inward, and it really felt like that year everybody was just consumed with looking inward, which is fine. There was so much going on outwardly, but my point being is like now we're moving into this different energy. It's the year of the tiger, and it's a year of activity, and it just feels like that's exactly what's going on right now. It's just lots of activity, whirlwind of energy, and that's okay.
Exactly.
It's just how it's supposed to be right now.
Well, and that's it's being aware of those ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
So the other day I talked to you a little bit about this before we started the podcast, but so I've been working with a medium named Holly for a couple of years now, and Holly's been on my podcast before. She's a wonderful human being, and she took me on a shamanic journey yesterday. She's a shamanic practitioner. She's not a shaman herself, but she was trained through the Lakota people, and so she took me on a shamanic journey yesterday, and asked me to, after we were done, go home, meditate, sit with it a little bit longer, and unpack what happened. And one of the things that I realized was that I was introduced to one of my spirit animals, which is a crane. And so, again, auspicious moments. So I looked up crane, and this was 2 days ago. This was on the eve of the Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year, which was February 1st, right? So on the 31st is when I had this session, and I went home and I met the crane. And then I looked it up, and so the crane symbolizes beauty, harmony, and grace. It represents positive change and has been associated with the New Year in various cultures. And that was on New Year's Eve of Lunar New Year. I found this spiritual animal that is recognized as so it's that intuitive moments of like, that makes complete sense to me, whereas it might not make sense to anybody else. But, it's those beautiful things that you're just paying attention to the world around you.
Oh,
and there's
for
this
sure.
beautiful message that just like popped up. It's like, hey, Adam, thanks for paying attention. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, one, everything's always perfect and exactly as it should be. Two, the universe is always telling us that. It's like there's one vibration in the universe, and that's it. Yes, it may be presented in different ways, and we may all hear a different message, but it's always telling you that everything's perfect. It's just a matter of, can you listen? And every once in a while, can you grasp onto that? And things like what you were saying, that's that message coming through, right?
Yeah, can you accept that what you're experiencing is perfect, is the perfection that you need it to be? But one of the things that we do want to talk about, and talking about Dharma, I think is a really good way to look at this is, how do we step towards our elder years and the importance of, holding that space as an elder. We looked it up earlier, but the term I know for women stepping into what is postmenopausal, things like that, it's called the Crone stage, which
just makes me cringe.
I know it's so funny because it's such a beautiful space to be in, but it has such a kind of a not nasty sounding, but just it's like a very aggressive word. Crone,
it is.
Whereas the male equivalent to this stage of life is sage.
That just seems so unfair.
I know, it totally does. You know, it's
Crone,
like, yeah,
sage.
Crone, yeah,
Sage.
sage.
But then, I mean, maybe I'm jaded and maybe you're biased as well, too, because we live in a society where an older man has a little easier time than an older woman. That being said, I still don't think that we have. Oh, we don't have those elders. We might have older men and women in our society, but they're so busy trying to stay young because that's kind of what we're taught that we're supposed to do, that they
Right.
haven't stepped into the role of being an elder. And yes, Dharma, one of the reasons why I was so attracted to him is because I do look at him as an elder, someone that has, what any of us want to do. We want to learn, grow, figure out our path, whatever it is, and then sit back and then light the way for others, right?
Yeah, there was a Vinay Gupta as a, I don't know where he's at now, but he was very heavily involved with a lot of the world, let's say like the Red Cross, a lot of the world organizations for hunger, for humanitarianism, stuff like that. I think one of the things that he was best known for was he created a mobile yurt that could be set up and broken down very quickly, and then was able to utilize this in different areas of the world, and impoverished areas, people that are like in Syria, for example, where a lot of refugees are happening. These refugee camps were able to be put up very, very quickly and very accommodating, to people. But one of the things Vinay Gupta talked about was getting to that stage in life, and he didn't recognize any of these terms that I'm using now, crone or sage, but he said that he was the last I listened to him, I think he was in his mid 40s, maybe late 40s, and he said that he recognized now that he's in a stage of life where he's not the doer.
Right.
He's the bringer together of the doers.
I like that.
And I love that because, we get to a point to where we just don't have the energy anymore. And maybe even not the ideas. Like, I mean, let's look at the West, right? So generically, the leaders of our country have been geriatric men of whatever, luckily now we have multiple races,
yes.
But, geriatric men that are usually plus 50, right now plus 70. Right? I mean, yes, we look to our elders for wisdom and guidance, but do we look to them for the innovative ideas that are going to push society forward? No, yeah, not really, right? So a lot of times, like, the elders are the holders of the space, to the containers, right? The knowings of like, hey, I'm going to teach you some stuff and the stuff that's worked for me, but also there's a big fucking world that now these ideas that I'm going to plant into your head, you're going to manifest those in different ways, and you're going to take things to a place that I don't even know of.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And so we need to get to a point to where I think you mentioned this earlier. We embrace the knowledge that we have. We stop trying to build on that knowledge. Not that it's a bad thing, but we really understand, embrace, and know the gnosis of the knowledge that we have.
Sure.
So that we can now share that and let the newer generation do with it as they wish and take it and run with it.
Instead of competing with them.
Right. Yeah.
Which is what you see now. And then, another thing, the role of the elder is to hold the space for traditions, and I think that's something that we're really lacking, and why a lot of us feel so lost is it's just we are disconnected from, whether it be, I mean, how many of us know our ancestral roots and are connected to those, or I mean, what kind of traditions do we have as Americans?
Right. Baseball and fucking hot dogs, right? War and greed.
And they're also the ones that are supposed to pass on these rites of passage, which I've heard you mention before. These are things that are essential to our growth as a human being in our journey here that we don't have.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's one of the reasons why cultural appropriation is such a strong thing in the West and colonization, is because we don't have that. And when we see cultures that do, we don't even realize why we're stealing it or going for it, because we're so thirsty just to have some kind of like meaning or some culture or some history.
We're starved for that.
Oh my God. I remember the first time I went to Europe, I've traveled outside of the country before, but I've never been to Europe. And Europe is like an old country. Like there's a lot of old stuff that's there. Obviously, there's like the Eastern countries are way older, but I haven't gone that far yet. But to go into a castle and to put my hand on a rock that is thousands and thousands of years old, not just a couple hundred years old like what we have in the States, it blew me away, the amount of energy that I felt from that, and the love and the feeling, and it's, again, like it's that we don't have that culture over here in the States. No. Like our culture is very, very young, but it's also mired in a lot of just like tragedy and just there's like crazy uneasy stuff. That, like when we see cultures as colorful as like the Hindu cultures with all the different gods and goddesses and the colors and the vibrancies and the mythology, the flying carpets and the bombs and the all these things that happen, of course we're going to be drawn to that shit, but that now we understand what appropriation is and colonization and how damaging that can be. We as responsible humans need to be understanding of how exciting that we can get, and how we need to really corral that excitement into a knowing of, okay, I'm drawn to this culture for a reason. Mm-hmm. Let me find a teacher to teach me about this culture. Yeah. It's so easy to just like look online, find some websites, read a couple books and be like, cool, now I know everything about Indian culture. No, fuck no, man. Get out there and get a teacher, because the job of the teacher is to assess where you're at, know what you can take, know what you need more time to ruminate on, and then know when to give you more information and when to back off. Books don't do that. Books, you just go at your own leisure.
Correct. And not to harp on like what Dharma says. I know whenever anyone talks to me, you're going to hear Dharma says at some point in time, because he's been such an integral figure in my own path.
I highly appreciate the Dharma says.
But he talks a lot about, like, there's some things that just have to be psychically imparted. There's knowledge that you can't gain from a book or, Google Nanda, as he likes to call it. Like, there's something about, there's knowledge that can be transmitted psychically just from being within the field of another human being. Right. So... Yeah, we need elders. We need elders that can impart that knowledge on us. The other thing that I was thinking about with elders, on the flip side of that, is I think one of the reasons we don't have elders is because we fear death so much in this society, that people don't want to step into that role of being your sage or your crone, because that means you're one step closer to death. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know.
Yeah. And then that's the society that we live in has been pushing us towards that for a long time. Right. Like, I mean, you even mentioned earlier with Dharma, they're getting Botox, and these are just like regular things that we do now, and our average age of expectancy keeps growing every year, which is good, but in a way it's good. But what are we doing with everybody as we get older? Sure. And we talked about that a little bit, what do we, if our average age expectancy is 80-ish on average, and now we're pushed out to 100, what are we doing with those extra 20 years of life? Are we contributing to society in some kind of way? Are we still holding jobs? Are we still forced into retirement? Is retirement now elongated? And now
we're greeters at Walmart.
Right, or, like, hey, here's the space to embrace the knowledge that you have, and find a community to help share that knowledge, and be a part of the embracing of the new generation coming forth, and taking this knowledge and these stories and seeing how they interpret them and move forward with them.
Well, you realize we're on the precipice at our age group. We're at this in between right now where we're not the maiden. What's the male version of the maiden? It's like the warrior or something like that.
Warrior, magician, lover, and...
we're not in those years anymore. Yeah. We're not spring chickens, right. But we're not quite the crone and the sage just yet. But we're at that pivotal point where I think if we start looking ahead to this is what I want to become, then maybe we will be the crone and the sage in another 20, 30 years. Everybody jump on this movement. Let's be crones together.
Damn straight, and that's embracing it. You know, I think if I had to put an archetype on, it'd probably be the back end of the king and queen, right? Because we're getting to the point to where we realize we don't need to rule everything anymore. We can
Yeah.
stand back and let the newer generation come
Hand
up
them the
and
keys, they can
exactly,
go.
and they're just like, there's just I'm gonna sprinkle little tidbits of knowledge on you here and there.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look. I like that. I like that. That's way better than Crone. And
Crone. You know, I can relate the word crone to when I first moved up here from Texas. I grew up in Texas, and it's sir and ma'am. And if you don't say sir and ma'am, yes sir, no ma'am, you get slapped, or something negative happens to you. But when I first moved up here and I'm waiting tables, and I'm like, yes ma'am, I'll be right back with your water.
No.
Excuse me? Did you just call me ma'am? How old do you think I am? I'm like, I don't have any idea how old you are. I'm just more afraid of my mom washing my mouth out with soap. Like, she's standing behind that pillar.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. She's waiting for me to not say
No,
ma'am.
it's like it's an insult to be referred to as someone over the age of, I don't know, 35 or
Right.
whatever, and I don't quite understand that. It's
Well, we've embraced a society that is made a market out of making us look younger, feel younger, be younger.
yeah.
And to help embrace that market, they've got to continue to advertise to it, which placates on our mentality, and we start to feel guilty about the wisdom that our body shows. Right? We know biologically for a fact that right now our cells degenerate. They don't always regenerate at the same elasticity as they had before, not the same consistency. That's what causes aging. It's a biological, natural occurrence in every single fucking being. So why have we not accepted it yet? Why do we keep fighting it? Why do we keep prolonging it? Like our biological makeup allows us to be here, procreate, so that the next round of people can come through, do what they have to do, and then die.
Yeah.
Right? That's biology. That's any biological creature. You're born, you do something to help the society, you procreate to help replenish society as you leave, and then you go the fuck to the next realm of life, right? Or whatever that next step is.
I go back to, I think it's fear of death, and it's that FOMO crap.
Right, FOMO.
That pervades society. Fear of missing out. Fear of missing out of what? Like, really, when you look back at your 20s, what was so great about that?
God,
I mean,
not a damn thing.
it was hard,
The
right?
lack of hangovers, maybe.
Like the only thing that I might wistfully dream of to have from my younger years is that amount of energy that I had, and the ability to regenerate, obviously, and recuperate faster than I do now, at my ripe old age that I am. And but I think about it too, and at the same time there's a shadow side to that. Like, I think if I still had that abundance of energy and I could still party and not worry about the repercussions, would I have slowed down enough to learn this beautiful medicine, to do this inner child work and grow spiritually? So I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I don't think there's anything great
Right.
that I would go back to in youth. Thank you for my youth.
Thanks for all the lessons.
Yeah, thanks for the
messages.
lessons and the experiences. But I'm excited. I'm gonna sage. I told you this earlier. I heard a woman say,
Sage,
instead of aging, she's gonna say, "I'm saging now," and I want to adopt that, and I want to grow into this role gracefully. I'm excited. That's been brought to my awareness now that I can actually consciously try and move forward into that role. And I think when I asked you, I told you I want to speak about this. I just want more awareness out there that, maybe listeners around our age will tune in and be like, yeah, that sounds great.
It really does. I as well embrace my age. I embrace the if we call it deterioration of the body, great. I embrace the involvement of my consciousness in this balanced body that I now have, instead of just the driver of the ego. There's so much beauty that can happen with the embracing of the stages of life instead of fighting them. Like, when we fight shit, it makes it so much harder. It's going to happen. Embrace it and move towards it. And let's see the beauty that can happen. But it's funny. I as we're talking and we talk about, like, if you just embrace this humanity, embrace the lessons that you learn. It's just to make things that much smoother, and just, that next, whatever next thing in life is, we're so ready for that thing, and we're not trying to fight this current thing.
Mm-hmm.
So this thing that's playing out in my head now is like the, proverbial gate that, a lot of people talk about. And just this person standing at the gate with all the people that were like wanting to live as long as they can, holding on to that last bit, taking the medicines and biologically like transferring their consciousness to artificial intelligence and all these things. And just having this person at the gate after you pass being like, see, it's pretty amazing on the other side over here, right? This whole time you're trying to stay there, but look at all of this
you
that's
were
next
fighting
now.
against it.
You
Yeah,
know?
for sure. And then, I mean, if you buy into the idea of reincarnation, we get another chance. Here we go again. Dharma always says, like, he can't wait. He says he goes to bed every night and crosses his hand over his chest. So if he dies in his sleep and he gets rigor mortis, they don't have to replace his hands. They can just put the flowers, like, right here. But his point is that he says, I hope that I go soon because I'm so ready to come back in a new body for the new experience.
That's beautiful.
And I like that idea. I mean, maybe that's just a way of making peace with death. But who knows what lies beyond? But we know it's gonna be different than this.
Right. Right.
So what's not exciting about that?
Exactly. Why not? Yeah. Why not find out what that next thing is? Like, there's so many. Not to say that this life sucks but this life's hard, right? We know that humanity is hard. There's a lot of lessons to learn. There's a lot of emotions to embrace. There's a lot of emotions that we'll never learn, and it's a hard it's a hard existence to live in. And even if we've, financially stable, or, and unfortunately in the West, the color of your skin plays a big part in that, right? The gender that you have plays a big part in that, right? Are you a white male? You probably got it pretty good, whether you realize it or not. Are you a black female? Wow, you've probably got it really tough, whether you realize it or not. There's the way that the society's set up. So, why not figure out what that next thing is? We don't have to chase it to know, like, I'm not saying go out and kill yourself and see what that next thing is, because that changes the whole course of your life,
right.
and your next existence, your reincarnation, if that's what you believe in. But, why not play this life out and just see what happens with it, and have the most embracing humanity that we can, knowing that the next thing is going to be even more beautiful, But I think that plays into a lot. Like, I can say before I started my spiritual path, like, I've said that before that I was an atheist, but I can honestly say that I never gave any thought to whether or not there was a higher power, if that was something bigger than me, if I even believed in it. I just didn't even really care. The conversation never crossed my mind. If it did, I would just put it out of my brain. I don't fucking care about that shit. So I can't even say that I didn't believe in a higher power. I just wasn't even ready to acknowledge that was even a thing that was going to happen. So, embracing and learning as much as we can about this existence to see the beauty in letting it all go. Impermanence.
That's a good lesson. It's a good, beautiful lesson.
Yeah. My buddy Robin, he says, life's the longest thing you'll ever do.
Now.
Like, well, exactly, right? Exactly. In this human form, right?
Right.
So get your money's worth, get out there and learn it. Learn what it's like to be human. Learn the curriculum.
Yeah, it makes me think, I'm pretty sure you've spoke of Ram Dass before, but, and he was talking about, he felt like he was so above all these things, these human things, because he was so evolved and so conscious. And his guide came and said, well, you're in school, you might as well enjoy the curriculum. And I remember hearing that, and that plays true every day in my life. I think, I'm here. Why not?
Right. Before enlightenment, there's laundry and dishes to do. After enlightenment,
there's laundry.
There's laundry and dishes to do.
Who is it? Someone said what do you do after you're enlightened? Chop wood, carry water.
There you go. Chop wood.
I don't remember where that comes from, but
I do remember hearing that one.
My partner's really good about reminding me about that, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have the personality. I'm very fiery. I have a lot of wood, but I have a lot of fire too, which is why I tend to jump into things really quickly. And I have this tendency to want to say, what's next? What's next? What's next? And my partner's not like that. He's very earth and grounded and moves very slow sometimes, much to my chagrin. But
Yeah.
he's very good at reminding me, like, when all's said and done, it doesn't matter what's next. You're still going to chop wood and carry water. That's all there is to it.
Exactly. I think that's, you know, that's a beautiful message. You know, just the patience of where we need to be.
Yoga is my first love.
Yeah.
It always will be if that doesn't come across. And I don't know. But, you know, Chinese medicine, also my first love. So it's like, how do I balance these two things? And I'm trying to figure out where these two things meet and where that's going to take me next. And yeah, so I was hoping you'd be a mirror for me. Tell me what you're up to so I have an idea what I'm up to.
Yep. Well, you know, I do believe in the idea of actualization. You
Yeah.
know, those I try to take the word self out of it now. Self-actualization. There's a guy named Simon Sinek that I love listening to, and he had this whole diatribe a while back about the negative overtones around self-actualization. And, you know, like it's like his example was self-help books, right? So you can go into any bookstore and there's sections upon sections upon sections of self-help books, but there's no group help books.
Yeah.
How do we help the group? And when we self-actualize, you know, we have, you know, there's I wouldn't call it a stigma, but there's this maybe an overtone of idea around it that you have self-actualized. You did the thing, right? And it's all you. It's your gifts, your skills, you have actualized. But the purpose for actualization is to utilize the gifts that, yes, you do hold, but you're presenting them to humanity now to help humanity. It's not yours to hold on to. Like, look at how special I am. I got all the gifts. Hey, buddy, everybody, all the gifts just happened. No, how do all the weird shit that you know and love in life, how does that culminate into this beautiful thing that is now the expression of all the love that you have giving to humanity in some kind of way, right? So it's like the self-made person is a big bullshit myth, because that self-made person, quote unquote, somebody gave that person a chance.
That's right.
Somebody gave that person some advice. Somebody let that person sleep on their couch where they didn't have any money. Something happened. Right? There was some help along that way. So when we finally get to that precipice and we're standing on the top of our mountain, like, I did it.
I did this. Yeah.
Fuck
well,
you.
Did you come up in a vacuum? I don't think so.
Exactly, right? Yes, you have grit, you have power, you have determination, great. But you also have a litany of people behind you that are helping hold you up. You know, so that actualization moment of how acupuncture, yoga, dharma, Chinese medicine, tattoo, rocks, all the cool shit that you love in life, how does that coalesce into some cool ass thing that now Mariko has to offer the entire world and the entire existence of humanity?
Well, I really feel like somehow it's going to be tapping back into that community, right? And that's something I've really missed the past handful of years while I've been gone and with COVID, is there's such a beautiful community here, and I don't know that I appreciated it to the extent that I could have until I was away from it. And now that I'm back, I'm just so excited to just jump right back in and see, like, who's swimming with me.
Yeah.
You know? Let's go.
Exactly. And, you know, you when we reached out to each other to start this conversation for the podcast, you had said that you wanted to work with me in doing some sound healing mixing with acupuncture.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What are your ideas around that?
So I was thinking, if you do your thing, and what I would love to do, and I guess it would depend on who we had, but then again, that goes back to, we're going to draw the people to us that are receptive to whatever it is we're going to offer. But I would love to do some, especially head points, you know, just kind of like Shen calming, mind opening, maybe perhaps open you up to be a little bit more receptive to the sound, so that people that were getting the healing of sound also had, I like to think of, like, when I put needles in someone, that I'm actually just tuning the dials, right?
Love
To the
that.
right frequency. So maybe it's like we're adjusting everyone's frequency and then playing them the most beautiful healing tone. And that's what I see.
I love that. I love that.
We need
That
to do that soon.
Yes, there you go. So just putting it out there for the listeners that we're going to experiment with this modality and then probably have it something to offer down the road.
You know, also, this is coming in, we're talking, it would be so great to like do mantras with needles.
Oh, yeah.
That would be fantastic. I don't know why, but do you remember that time? I don't know if I gave you acupuncture when I gave Zach Haley acupuncture. I was just thinking about that particular moment, and if we could put everybody at the level that he was at for a sound bath, man, that'd be something else.
I was actually telling somebody that story the other day. I can't remember who it was, but yeah, I was laughing. I was just like, dude, so homie Mariko, love her to death. This was the thing that happened.
Yeah.
It was so fucking funny. Oh my God, that was so good.
You know, that was back before I was getting ahead of myself in my schooling, and I didn't know that, you know, if you put points all in the head and the upper body without putting something in the lower body to ground that energy, you really put someone in like a different headspace, so to say.
You know, but you know, it's interesting that that situation has played out in so many Reiki situations that I've had. You know, with therapeutic dialogue, people coming in and so tell me what's going on with you, what's up. And hearing people say, like, I'm just like, there's so much planning, there's like holidays, you know, this was a couple months ago. And, you know, I hear all of this activation of upper chakras, the ethereal chakras. I'm up in my head, I'm planning, I'm thinking, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much happening. And it just makes me think of Zach laughing and rolling around on our living room floor because all the energy was pulled up into his head. What did he need? He needed to be grounded.
He needed to be grounded.
Right? And so that's an immediate trigger for me that when clients come in and start talking about that, it's like, cool, get on the table. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ground you, and then we'll go from there. You know, because we got to get that energy dispersed evenly through the body.
Yeah.
Because right now it's just focused into one spot. And it's gonna drive you crazy.
Yeah. No. Well, I think we could do that intentionally.
Yes.
Bring the energy up for a little bit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
With intention.
There is a studio in Northern California, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but the studio is called Eighth Chakra, and I think his name's Andre or Anders, something with an A. I'm trying to get him on the podcast, but he does a promotion called Gongs and Bongs, and where he does gong sound baths, but encourages people to smoke weed beforehand.
Oh, nice.
And I just love the whole moniker Gongs and Bongs. I'm like, that is good for you. And that's honestly, that's the reason I reached out to him. I saw that promotion. I'm like, you've got some cool shit going on. And the more research I did, he also does combo ceremonies and all this stuff.
That is really cool.
Very, very cool stuff.
You know, something else just came to me too. Like, I just feel like we could collaborate on so many beautiful things. But I was thinking about, you had mentioned briefly that I do this type of acupuncture. It's called esoteric acupuncture, where you're putting sacred geometry grids on the body based on how many chakras people have blocked or what they're working on, right? And I was just thinking, how powerful would it be to combine an esoteric treatment with some sound healing and Reiki on top of it? Get camo here and do some breath work?
Oh my God, yes. That's what's up.
Oh,
and that's the beautiful
man.
thing about, like, you know, all these people with their talents and their gifts, learning how to, you know, work with each other. You know? And again, that's that ego set aside. It's not my client. It's not your client. It's not my healing. It's not my modality. It's, what do you got? What's your history? Right? Cool. I got this. You got that? Cool. Let's all get together and do some awesome thing. You know?
And think about how great that is for the person coming in as well, too. They don't have to go out and individually discover, okay, this works. Maybe I'll try this. It's all just right there. And, oh, man, it's such a beautiful thing. I know, hands down, it is not my path to walk alone in this journey. It is just not. And I think that's one of the biggest drivers for me to come back home and get back into this community is I'm ready to walk with you guys, whoever my partners are out there.
Hell yeah. I at one point in time thought I could do it all myself. Not just the healing, not in that actually I'll say never the healing, but living life.
Yeah.
Right. I used to call it Waldening myself. There's a book called Walden by Henry David Thoreau.
Yeah.
You go out in the middle of Alaska, buy some property, and just be by yourself. Right. You had 2 chairs, one for him, and in case somebody came by, you had a chair for him outside of that, just by himself. And yeah, totally. You can live by yourself and you can never annoy yourself and you can never put anything around you that could stimulate the triggers that you could potentially have in your life. But where are you growing?
Yeah.
How are you growing from that? Because that there still are triggers. You're just not triggered by them because you're isolating yourself. So what happens if that trigger does pop up? Are you able to deal with it? No,
Yeah.
because you're by your fucking self, right? So put yourself into humanity. Put yourself around people. Figure out what those triggers are. Figure out who your partners are, right? Because we can't do this all on our own.
No,
there's
we
so
can't.
much beauty to sharing the existence of humanity with others that you don't really realize it until you immerse yourself into it, or really you separate yourself from it. Even the monastic cultures, there's still the groups of monks
Sure.
or nuns. There's still a group of people. There's ascetics that go live in caves and are on their own path, and that's great. But the whole world being that, that's
No.
not a path.
I think it was Aristotle that said the man that can exist outside of society is either a god or a monster.
Mm-hmm.
I remember learning that back in a philosophy class in college. That was a really long time ago, but
Yeah.
that's always stuck with me. And
Yeah.
I think there's some truth to that. Like, to be a human and part of this experience is to be in community with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we just wrap it on up on there? Yeah, be a part of community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a beautiful message. So that I think it's overarching. You don't have to be spiritual. You don't have to be, like have a mentality of like higher self, or just the beauty of being a part of a community.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of communities get. I shouldn't say a lot of communities, but be careful finding the communities that make sense to you.
Yes.
There are definitely people searching desperately for communities that find themselves within a community that might not have the best interest of humanity in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, just like anything, when you seek out the knowledge, be weary of the provider of the knowledge, but do your due diligence. Find the thing that makes sense to you and embrace that community, because there's so much beauty that can happen in a positive community environment.
Well, and this is a chance for everyone to trust their intuition, right? Because I think you know when you're in the right place at the right time.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, love. Appreciate you sharing time and your wisdom, and I'm so excited to work with you on some of these acupuncture sound baths.
Yes.
And for our listeners, if some of that stuff speaks to you, you can reach out to us. We'll leave links and show notes and all that stuff, how to get a hold of us.
Thank you.
All right, love. We'll see you soon. All right, thank you so much for spending time with Mariko and I. Look to the show notes for links and topic ideas that we have discussed here. And if you need to get in touch with us, that information is there as well. Please subscribe to the podcast and share it if you feel compelled to. You can also listen to this podcast on my new website, adamrealhealing.com. Thank you so much for all your love and support. Obeisance. We'll see you next time.